Here we go, my people.
Great. A week on, the cobwebs have formed on my computer. I go to log in. The password doesn't work because my sidekick here goes and gets a new phone and changes everything because I don't know what it could be. So anyway, that explains the delay. Welcome, guys, to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, with my partner in crime here, Sean Williams. And after a week, no one apparently blew their fingers off, so, no JPP stuff. We seem to have all survived okay. Fourth went fine. We're back to the grind. And guess what? We are less than a month away from training camp. I believe training camp starts in about, 3 weeks? I don't have a calendar in front of me. It's a 5-week month.
We are 9 days removed from Marshawn Lattimore, Trey Hendrickson, Thor, all of those highly touted rookies showing up and showing out the 19th, maybe. Anyway, 9 days from today, the rookies later, the vets show up and we're full swing. It's getting close. It's time.
Yeah.
Everybody else in the NFC South needs to watch out because we're gonna make it happen.
Around this time last year, we were sitting there talking about Carolina being the most dominant team in the division, and that Atlanta and New Orleans were probably going to be battling out for last place. Well, it turned out Atlanta ended up winning the division. Carolina ended up in last place. We were still battling somebody. Bay, once again, is a team on the rise, and that leads us right to our special guest tonight. We're going to try and take you guys around the NFC South over the next few weeks. We're going to start with Tampa Bay. And Sean, why don't you go ahead and introduce our partner here?
I was telling Alan off the air. I find it really ironic, our show notwithstanding, because obviously I do this once a week. Under the Dome notwithstanding, I have appeared on for Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, New Orleans Saints podcast. Now, I think that's because when we came along, they kind of said, well, hey, this is what we've been waiting on. There ain't no need to start anymore. This is what we're going to get behind. But anyway, I digress. David Harrison's our bud. Ren and Dax, we love those guys. But I'm going to tell you, one of my very, very closest friends, the person that I call mainly because he's 2 hours behind me, and by that time of the day when everybody else here is giving up, I can call him, get him on the phone, and just start off over. My man, Eugene Thomas from the BUC What You Heard podcast. I've been a guest on there, I think, once, maybe twice. And you as a talking person on these shows, very rarely do you ever have any sort of idea what to expect going in. But I'm proud to say that the process of getting me acclimated to go on to his show led to a really good friendship with this guy. So without further ado and me sitting here jabbering, you guys please make welcome Eugene Thomas from BUC What You Heard podcast. Gene, how are you tonight, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I'm glad to be on here. This is one of my favorite shows. The work I do, I'm able to listen to podcasts. So you guys are definitely, when I can't catch you live, I always catch you the next day and just listen to what's going on. To me, the New Orleans Saints are always that team that you have to worry about. And, it's not like the Cleveland Browns or the New York Jets where you have a team, you're like, oh, okay, this is the JV of New York. We're going to, this is pretty much a bye, basically. No, with the Saints, you guys have a future Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer quarterback who can who gets he gets the best out of his wide receivers, and that's scary. And I think the one thing that's kind of hurt you guys over the past couple of years was the defense. If you can, hold down your points, Drew Brees can score, and having Rob Ryan, the Rob Ryan curse here, was as bad as a Kardashian curse. And I don't know which was worse for you guys, but you guys are coming out of it, and it's one of those things that I expect big things from the Saints this year. Your general manager, my hat's off to him every year. You guys are supposed to be in salary cap hell every year, but every year you manage to make some good free agent moves. So I think getting the right defensive coordinator in there, I think you guys are pointed in the right direction. But as far as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go, I've been a Bucs fan since '79, and just been a fan since then. And my father used to take me to games, and my uncle would take me to some games. And, I got to meet Doug Williams, and I got to meet John McKay. And I actually have a picture with John McKay when I was little. So it's just been in my blood. The Buccaneers has been in my blood. And it's, from the NFC North all the way over to the NFC South now, it's just been one of those, been quite an adventure, to be honest.
Much like being a Saints fan in those early days, your parents taking you to those Buck games in the 80s, that could constitute child abuse. I'm just letting you know.
Well, in 79, they did go to the NFC Championship game, led by Doug Williams and running back Ricky Bell. So, I started out on a good note. And, fortunately.
Let me ask you this, Gene. Much like the Saints, the window of the time arc on our franchises runs similar because one came pretty close along there as far as institutionalizing the team. Let me see, how do I say that? Over the arc of your franchise's history, this thing bouncing is making me seasick. Over the course of Saints, I can see how a lot of people, in my opinion, unjustly so, consider Archie to be the man. In my opinion, there's only one guy. If you look at everything they've done,
Aaron Brooks.
Blah, no, actually,
I'm just messing with you. I'm a Ken Stabler fan, actually, and I know that he didn't do a lot with his team, but while he was in New Orleans, but Ken Stabler was always one of my favorites to watch.
Yeah, who would you consider to be that guy for Tampa?
For Tampa, it would have to be Doug Williams. I mean, if you're talking on offense, you're talking quarterbacks, it would have to be Doug Williams. And I'm not taking anything away from Brad Johnson and what he was able to accomplish, but I just look at what Doug Williams was able to do, and just statistically what he was able to accomplish, and it was cut short because of ownership. And I think that he could have done a whole lot more with this team. And we see what he did when he went to the Redskins, and he was able to get that Super Bowl win. So it just kind of proved.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I think that Brad Johnson, in a day time in this league where the media push, so to speak, is behind your characters, your TOs, your all these guys, your prime time, those.
Deion Sanders.
Yeah, Brad Johnson up and work and do his thing. He didn't get much in terms of a media thing to follow. All you had was what was on the field, and to mainstream sports fans, that's pretty boring. But there was anything but boring to what Brad Johnson did on the field.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting you're bringing up Brad Johnson and Doug Williams because, like, Meekum is the owner. When Hugh Culverhouse, and I should wash my mouth out after saying his name, I'm
Yeah,
sure, but
me
after
too.
Hugh Culverhouse owned that team, he really was just trying to squeeze every penny out of it. And here's, you mentioned 79, McKay, his 5-year building plan, he reaches the NFC Championship. Then in 1981, this team kind of starts to level off and drop off because they don't put the money in to get that next step. They don't draft as well, and they don't do those things. So then you have the wasteland of the 80s, and that's why Doug Williams goes off to the USFL. Steve Young comes in as the USFL folds, and he ends up going to the 49ers, becomes a Hall of Fame quarterback. You had the whole incident
Vinny
with
Testaverde.
yeah. Well, I was going to say before that, Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
Oh,
Bo that Jackson was a nightmare. That was a nightmare.
Yeah. And he was drafted in Tampa Bay because they wanted to take away any leverage that Bo Jackson would have as far as baseball, because they didn't want to go through what the Baltimore Colts did with John Elway. They go and basically set him up, telling him, "Oh yeah, you can come visit." Auburn. It won't interfere with your eligibility. And sure enough, they take baseball away from Bo Jackson. So he held that against him and refused to report, even though they drafted him. So, I mean, you had all that horrible stuff go on till the 90s, really, when the minute they draft Warren Sapp and they start drafting, John Lynch, and then you draft Derek Brooks, and the ownership changes, and then the team changes the team colors from the old creamsicle uniforms and the blue.
I think this is a good segue right here. And just historically, you think about a McKay. It was Rich McKay who was the general manager here during all those times. You talk about Sam Weish, you talk about Tony Dungy, you talk about John Gruden. The one tie that binds all of them together is Rich McKay.
Yeah. And that was the turnaround. That's when the Tampa Bay Bucks started to become winners.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
What were you going to say?
Me? He does this sometimes. He freezes. What?
And I got my wife back, man. What the crap? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Do you remember the final record of the 1978 Tampa Bay Buccaneers? There's a purpose for me asking.
Oh yeah, is this the first win that they got? Actually, was
against 77 in 77.
77.
Yeah,
okay.
That cost Hank Stram his job.
Yeah.
You're welcome. That I asked. Of course, as we were alluding to earlier, one of the greatest things about this National Football League is the colorful history that it has for those who go into it and investigate it. And part of that colorful history was almost a impossible situation for an expansion coach in Coach McKay.
John McKay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's almost an impossible situation to be in, but you have to work nonetheless. And he handled it by being generally calm. And the one thing I remember was I don't know, time, place, situation, or anything like that. All I know is in 78, doing a presser, and the reporter asked him something, and I believe it was something along the lines was, what do you think of your team's execution today? He said, execution, I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one thing about McKay that stood out the most. Great guy.
I could tell McKay stories or repeat McKay quips all day long.
The success that they had under Gruden, got a Lombardi Trophy. I think that that at the very least that should be considered a tip of the cap. to John McKay and all the dues that he paid because you see on the NFL Network on ESPN, you see the film clips of like the punter missing the punt, and then chasing down the low snap and stuff like that. And
yeah,
respects that type of memory and history that is connected with you guys is connected with us as well, because I can't tell you how many people I've actually heard use the word, y'all were the lovable losers of the National Football League until you won the Super Bowl. Well, you're only as good as the last Super Bowl that you won, and it was a long time ago for both of our organizations.
You realize that we're representing, all of us here tonight are representing the only two teams that won a Super Bowl in the NFC South.
Yeah.
The other two teams are a big 0-2.
Yeah, and then by the way, they were the last two teams to go to the Super Bowl and represent the NFC South.
Yeah, so I guess we have to go in there and fix that. Show them how it's done. Which that leads you to the next segue. I was going to ask you, we've been talking about the history of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but right now, there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot. I've got my football preview magazines have come out, Lindy's and Pro Football Weekly, and those magazines, and a lot of them are really saying that Tampa Bay is the team to watch this year. Tampa Bay is the dark horse. Tampa Bay could win the division because, this division, you go from, as the old saying goes, you go from the outhouse to the penthouse real quick. Tampa Bay hasn't won a playoff game, or even been to the playoff games, I should say, since 2008. What is the feeling in Tampa right now, and why is there so much optimism about the team?
Well, you kind of have to go back to when Lovie Smith was hired as the head coach, and they turned around and brought in Jason Light. One thing that I will say, just kind of going back a little bit in history, Bruce Allen was a general manager for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers while John Gruden was here. And once they were removed, they brought in a general manager, Mark Dominic, who was actually a swimmer in high school or college or something like that. Mm-hmm. But he worked his way up the ranks into the front office, and he was the general manager. And if you combine all the draft picks that they've made that didn't pan out and all the free agent moves that they made, they just really didn't do anything to really put themselves in a position to have a direction for this team to go. Well, you enter Jason Light, and Jason Light, since the beginning, has been able to make some pretty good moves. His first year wasn't all that spectacular, but once he was the general manager and he pretty much made all the calls, and he didn't kind of share that with Lovie Smith, you saw a big difference with the veterans and the free agents that they brought in. So starting with Charles Sims, where I know a lot of fans went ballistic when Charles Sims was drafted because Doug Martin was already here. But when Charles Sims was healthy, Charles Sims can be a difference maker, catching the ball out of the backfield and getting yards, just a change of pace back from a Doug Martin when he's healthy. So he saw where, players like that came along. Kevin Pamphile, late round pick. He's been able to contribute consistently for this team. So we can see where Jason Light, a general manager who is connected with the head coach, can make a big difference, chemistry-wise, and getting the right players into a system. So that's kind of where the optimism was. And we've seen them gradually grow and progress. And then you enter Jameis Winston, a franchise quarterback, which, again, you mentioned a lot of the quarterbacks that Tampa Bay has had, and not to slight Brad Johnson in any way. I'm just saying that, a quarterback that was drafted and brought up through the ranks, we haven't seen that since Doug Williams, to be honest, because, Steve Young, he wasn't here long enough to make that happen. Vinny Testaverde, not here long enough to make that happen. Trent Dilfer was an interception waiting to happen every time he stepped on the field. So you had all these different quarterbacks, and I can go down the list, and none of them are on that level where Jameis Winston is. And now, if you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they do have a direction that they're going. You have your quarterback, and once you've developed your line and you get some of these key players, they've pretty much put themselves in a position to be better than what they were. And then keep in mind that a 9-win season. This is their first winning season since 2010. So again, it's another thing that just kind of adds to the optimism that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are trending in the right direction.
I'm trying to find the name of, because I'm Googling as we're talking here. I'm trying to find the name of that quarterback that Tampa had, who had my favorite nickname of all time, the Overthrowing Samoan.
Oh, Jack Thompson.
Jack
Throwing
Thompson.
Samoan.
Yeah, the Overthrowing Samoan. That had been one of my favorite nicknames of all time. Yeah, because we've had, this is the Saints. We talked about this a little bit off the air, but until we got Drew Brees, this is where quarterback careers came to die. You had Archie Manning. That's the only quarterback they've ever drafted in the common draft in the first round in the entire franchise's history. If you look at all the quarterbacks that have done anything for the franchise, all of them have come via some sort of free agency. It started with Billy Kilmer in the original expansion draft.
Right.
Archie Manning was a drafted player, but Kenny Stabler came in from free agency because the Houston Oilers had let him go. Jim Everett came in via a trade with the Rams. Bobby Hebert, free agent coming out of the USFL. He wasn't even drafted in the NFL. And then, of course, Aaron Brooks came in via trade with Green Bay, and Drew Brees came in via free agency. So I can totally understand that. You've never really seen this franchise develop any quarterback in its 50-year history. That's interesting. I had one question, though, that while you were talking, what happened with Lovie Smith? Why did they? I mean, now it looks like a great move, but it was kind of surprising after 2 years that Lovie Smith was shown the door, because it seemed like the Bucs were starting to get organized after Ray Morris and I can't even think of that college coach.
Greg Schiano.
Greg Schiano really were running the Bucs they were running the Bucs into the ground, and he was a little punk anyway.
Yeah, he was.
Gene, before you answer this, from this, and I had this conversation when I was on with you, and I'm gonna let you take what I say and kind of paint on. I think that the solidity of her infrastructure, if that makes any sense, to the unqualified listener. Your infrastructure showed when you didn't bottom out. And I told you guys that was on with you that night. You didn't bottom out when Lovie left, as I thought you would.
And I'll tell you, and I can tell you why, which will kind of correlate to what he's talking about. You have a general manager who has a direction. He has an idea of this is what he wants to do with the team. You have a offensive coordinator that's promoted to a head coach position. And then you bring in a defensive coordinator that the former offensive coordinator is familiar with, and it builds that cohesiveness. Yes. What you saw was an upgrade in scouts. You saw an upgrade in coaches. You just saw an upgrade across the board on all the different positions, all the different things that us as fans don't really talk about. Especially like scouting, especially coaching. Coaching is huge. Yeah. If you have a guy that just shows up every day and says, okay, you do what you want to do, or they don't put a lot of emphasis on teaching players to get better, you're not really building that culture. And I know that's a cliche word that we hear a lot is the word culture, but what Tampa's been able to accomplish is changing that culture from a losing culture to wanting to win. And a lot of that started happening, especially when Jameis Winston came in. He's a man who he's not about the money. He's about, I want to be the greatest quarterback ever. That's his mindset. and that gets contagious when you have guys coming in. You lead by example. Guys wanting to get better in the film room. Guys wanting to get physically fit to play and be able to last, and it's just contagious. And they now have the philosophy of family as opposed to a football team. So they're all working together in unison, and that's one of those things that you won't see in the stat book, but you'll definitely see it, you know, in the field. And hopefully, I expect to see this in the back end of the season, which will be for Tampa, will be the toughest part of our schedule. Will be the back end of the season.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Coming into that season, it came down to Winston or Mariota, Mariota or Winston, and there again, out on your show, I was Mariota all the way.
And you know, you know what? I love Marcus Mariota. A lot of Bucs fans are going to hate me for saying this. I think he's a quality person, great human being. He can throw the ball. He's efficient, and he does what he does. Unfortunately, he just hasn't been able to stay healthy the last couple of seasons. But you know, all that can change. I felt like you know, looking back, Jameis Winston was ideal for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because of what the culture was here. He wants everybody around him to get better, and that you needed somebody vocal. And I think that Marcus Mariota was a great fit for the Titans because he doesn't have to be vocal. He can let his actions lead the team, and you know, they tend to follow him. He's more of a silent leader. But I've always felt like his demeanor, I'm not sure how his demeanor would have worked.
I think probably some of that's got to do.
What were you saying?
I think
what were you going to say?
Point that I think that probably some of it's got to do with proximity as well. You're talking about Tallahassee and Tampa Bay. That's going to put a behind every 18 inches. That's where it starts. But I'll be the first to tell you that I knew, or I think the way that I resigned myself to putting it after so many tries of trying to get it right, if Jameis Winston can stay out of trouble and do what it is that he's supposed to do, he could be a good quarterback at this level. And there again, as you and I have talked about, I got Tampa favorite to win the division this year.
Yeah. And, you know, the whole thing about the character issues, I did my research, and, you know, I've pretty much come to my conclusions about all this. I think what he's doing right now is he's leading by example again. What he's doing, showing up at Devin Funchess has a wide receiver camp or a camp, and Jameis Winston's there in Michigan. Jameis Winston has just been all over the country working with kids, you know, for football, because that's his love. That's his passion, is football. So again, I think that you know, so far he's proven himself to be a very high character person, and most people that meet him, I don't think I know of too many that haven't, that they like what he's capable of doing. And you know, again, he's the leader of this team. He's shown, you know, time and time again, he is the leader of this team. And you know, that's what this area needed. Tampa needed something like this. You know, I look at Drew Brees. I look at where the Saints were before Drew Brees came in, and I look at what he was able to do. And I know San Diego is kicking themselves for not keeping him around. But, you know, you guys are very fortunate to have a first ballot Hall of Famer. And, you know, again, I expect big things from him. When you throw for over 5,000 yards and, you know, you guys just couldn't get over the hump, that's just amazing to have a quarterback. And they say that he's losing a step. I wish I was losing a step and able to throw for 5,000 yards. So, again, you know, you see how the importance of a franchise quarterback, that guy that you don't have to worry about him. You can focus on other needs, you know, on the team. So you guys can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, in many ways, the Saints right now, and the Saints the past 3 years, have been the latter years of the Dan Marino Miami Dolphins era, or the Eric Coryell San Diego Chargers. A lot of offense, a lot of points. Just you don't have enough of a defense to really win or really advance anywhere. Yes, those teams made the playoffs, but even in the years they didn't make the playoffs, they really weren't going to go anywhere because they just didn't have the defense to do it. And I've been beating this drum all year. To me, with this kind of offense, and Tampa Bay is different in this regard, but with a quarterback like Drew Brees and the way this offense is constructed, the defense just needs to be able to force turnovers. If they can force the turnovers and win the turnover battle, that's what it will take to get this defense and this team over the 7-9 hump and make it a 10-6 or 11-5, 12-4 kind of ball club that can advance in the playoffs. Because that, to me, that's how this team, the only way this team can win.
And Drew Brees on a short field is a surgeon, and he goes to work if he's got a short field to work off of.
Exactly.
I'm trying to remember the game that went to overtime, and he was amazing. Just chucking the rock down the field the way he was, and you wouldn't guess that. You wouldn't think that he's over the hill, as a lot of these analysts say. I think this guy's got a lot left in his arm. There have been some throws that he would have, at a younger Drew Brees, would have made, but he's having issues with. But still, this guy still has a lot left in the tank. As we're going,
It's the accuracy. And this is something I tweeted to somebody the other day. It's not about the arm strength. It's not about having that cannon. It's the accuracy. He can place that ball where he needs to place it. So he throws receivers open. He can throw the deep ball in a way that, it's not going to be in the air 70 yards, but it's going to be on the mark, a back shoulder throw, or fit it through a window that a defensive back has great coverage, but it still gets there in time. He hasn't lost any of the RPMs on the ball, and he hasn't lost that mechanic where it's 1, 2, 3. We make that decision. He has that arm cock, and bam, the ball's gone.
Right.
That's when it takes him longer to get that ball to come out. When he starts becoming a little more inaccurate, then I think that's when he'll be done. But I don't see that either.
Yeah.
That's why the Saints will always be a threat, because they can beat anybody in the league so long as the defense can hold a team down to enough possessions. Let me back up a little bit and try and make this a little bit clearer. This is how a Saints team wins. They get the ball second. They lose the toss. The other team gets the ball first.
Or they defer.
Correct. They get the ball with, say it's a 10-14 game, something like that. They get the ball and they score right before halftime, a touchdown. Then they get the ball to open the second half, and they go down the field and score again. Suddenly now, a 14-10 game is a 24-14 game, or 31-14 game kind of ball game, and it changes the dynamics. You get a couple turnovers thrown in that game, and suddenly now a game that statistically is very close, the Saints have pulled away and are winning by 17 or 21 points. And that's the key to the team winning. The defense just needs to make a couple key stops and get a couple of turnovers, so they're always on the plus side. To me, Tampa Bay is built a little bit differently. Even though they've got the big receivers, they're more of an aggressive, fast defense that's going to force you into more of a take away the run, make you play more of a passing kind of game where they can turn that pass rush loose on you. Yeah.
I wanted to jump in here real quick because we're talking about defense. We're on the defensive side of the ball, and I know that I'll forget this if I don't ask you right now. Front four. You guys are running 4-3 defense, right, this year?
That's the $1,000,000 question. I don't know what we're running.
Because I mean, you have a guy like a Sheldon Rankins, and I mean, that was the draft pick. That's who I wanted Tampa to get, was Sheldon Rankins. I love his game. Unfortunately, he did get injured, but he came back. Your front line, because everybody knows that on defense, when you get pressure on the quarterback, that's gonna take a lot of the pressure off of your secondary, and it can help with your turnover battle, as you were mentioning. So I guess my question is, I know with and I really feel bad about Nick Fairley. As a human being, and let's take sports out of this, I wouldn't wish what he's going through on anybody. You've basically taken his livelihood away from him, and I wish him the best. But losing a Nick Fairley, is a big blow to this team. As far as depth goes, how are the New Orleans Saints going to rebound from that going into the season?
Well, Rankins and Fairley basically played the same position. They both played the 3 technique. On paper, we are a 4-3 defense. However, if you read some of the comments from, like, say, linebackers coach Mike Nolan, he talks about the Saints running 3-4 concepts. And
so this is a hybrid. This is more like a hybrid then.
It's a hybrid defense, and I want to say it's a lot like how the 49ers defense was built in the early 80s when they had the elephant defense. Do you know what I'm talking about that?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a 4-3-3-4 concept where you have a designated pass rusher as your edge rusher. And that's going to be the battle right now that we're going to have to see. They don't have a true nose tackle to be a true 3-4 defense. They certainly don't have enough linebackers. They've got a lot of tweener guys to play defensive end. And you've got you've got a lot of inside linebackers on this team. So it's going to be interesting to see how Dennis Allen puts his defense together. He keeps calling it the best 11. That's his defensive scheme.
Hey, that's a safe answer right there.
But I was going to say, we also run 3 safety concepts. A lot of 3 safety concepts where you have Kenny Vaccaro, who's by nature strong safety, playing down like a Sam linebacker, strong side, outside linebacker. And they drafted Marcus Williams to play more of that deep center field that Jarius Byrd couldn't do for us. That guy who is going to be the rover.
So it's kind of like how they converted Mark Barron over for the Rams. He's playing for the Rams now as he started out as a safety, but they've got him kind of playing a sort of a linebacker. It's a hybrid type thing, and it's kind of similar to that, isn't it?
Yes, and the argument they're going to say for that kind of formation is, he's not really the run support guy. He is more or less designed, because so many teams run 3 wides, 1 back, that you kind of have to have what they call a big nickel. Right. Where you have either safety or a big physical corner out there. So you're kind of always in that specialty package. It's a hard way to describe this defense, and we're going to have to see how this shakes out. Where Fairley's loss is going to hurt us the most, I think, is going to be in those pass rushing packages that the Saints were going to put together, where you could have Rankins and Fairley out there playing side by side, along with whomever the designated pass rusher, the guy who plays the elephant position. They call it the joker here, but the joker position on the left defensive end, and on the right defensive end, you've got Cam Jordan. So I don't know. We're going to have to see how this plays out. That's going to be the part of the training camp battles. Who are going to be our starting linebackers? Who's going to be that starting defensive end?
I've said this entire time, the whole Sheldon Rankins situation is tragic, and it's regretful. At the same time, it's exactly like completely just out of the blue. This is something that he's playing with since he left Auburn. Or actually, he played with it while he was at Auburn. He's persevered through his entire professional career. I don't know why. I don't know what precipitated having to take an extra look at it. Not my business, not my concern. But I saw that to say this. Alan say way more times than I care to repeat. Sheldon Rankins was not drafted in the first round to come in here and be a backup to anybody, up to and including Nick Fairley. And if you think back a year ago at this point in time, Nick Fairley wasn't even a starter on our defensive line. The starter was and only a nagging, what was it, a quad, ham, something like that, injury forced him out of the starting rotation and forced Fairley in. Please, don't misconstrue what I'm saying. A talent, absolutely. Nick Fairley, what he accomplished last year was maybe unprecedented, maybe not. But you're not going to either accomplish going out there and replacing his productivity, if that makes sense. You're not trying to replace his productivity. All you're going to do is go on. You have a draft pick from a year ago that has, I think, this going into his 4th year now of organized football in David Onyema. I think that it's a pretty safe assumption that in terms of quality coaching, he has had very, very little in his young fledgling career. That being said, everything that he did coming into the Saints was just absolute strength on strength, power versus power. Now you've had an entire season where he was on the 53-man roster. You've had an entire offseason of nutrition, workouts, so on and so forth. You've had basically now an entire calendar year to address his readiness to be a productive member of the National Football League. And I think that you're going to find he's going to have a contribution to make in that. The long story made even longer, apparently. What I'm trying to say is, while it may not be an ideal situation or circumstance, the Saints are prepared for this to happen. And the fact that it happened as early on as it did is to their benefit as well. A starting player that gets hurt and misses time in that rotation, be that preseason, be that camp, be that OTAs, if he is not in that rotation, then that's time missed, and that's going to be felt, obviously. But
next man up.
Yeah, absolutely. Next man. It could be so much now for New Orleans Saints. If you think back positionally, you think back to a little over a year ago when we got to week 2 of the season, and we were to the 7th and 8th players on the depth chart at cornerback.
Now, have the New Orleans Saints addressed the cornerback position to where you're comfortable this season? Barring injury, that you have somebody back there that can make plays?
Well, yeah, I am. I mean, unless death comes and strikes the secondary again like it did last season, you've got Lattimore, who was your first-round draft pick,
right.
probably arguably the best cornerback of the draft. You've got Delvin Breaux, who, Delvin Breaux in 2015 came out of the CFL and really looked like a legitimate number 1 corner. and he will probably end up being your number 2 if Lattimore plays to his ability. So that he was a good cornerback. Now, last year he had a broken leg. Broke it on opening day against the Raiders, came back from it quickly, about as fast, a little bit faster, I should say, than Rankins did. But unlike Rankins, a cornerback has to cut and open his hips up and everything else. So the leg really still impacted him. So he ended up getting put on injured reserve. P.J. Williams, a cornerback who has yet to play a full season. He was medical redshirted basically his rookie year in 2015. And in 2016, he gets that awful concussion against the Giants. But he is a guy from Florida State who is projected to be, one of the top cornerbacks, low first round, high second round pick. We get him in the 4th because basically he had, the 3rd, basically because he had issues off the field. But there's potential in that kid too. So you've got 3 cornerbacks.
And here's another one that I really had a question about. Sterling Shepard. I noticed Sterling Moore. So I'm sorry, Sterling Shepard.
Yeah.
Sterling Moore.
Receiver.
Yeah. I noticed that you didn't really mention him as some of your top talent there. How is he fitting in, as a Saint?
Veteran depth. He's a guy that he's your kind of guy you want to play the nickelback. He's a guy you want to play your dime back. He's a veteran, heady cornerback, but you don't want him matched up against the best receiver on your team. For example, you don't want him going up against Mike Williams. Mike Evans. Yeah, Mike Williams has been gone for a while.
Yeah.
Mike Evans in Tampa. You don't want him going against Julio Jones in Atlanta. You don't really want him going up against, you might want him to go against Kelvin Benjamin now, judged by the way he's put on. But, you don't want him going against your number 1 guy. You want him covering that Sterling Shepard. You want him covering that
number 3, that
number 3, number 4 receiver. So he is in the mix, and I really think, if Rowan Lattimore, you're 1 and 2, I really think Moore will probably challenge P.J. Williams to be that starting nickelback or come in on certain situations. You will see him in rotating with P.J. Williams while Williams kind of gets, he's really playing still as a rookie, gets his feet wet and gets accustomed to the speed of the NFL.
Yeah.
So that's where I see him fitting in. And you need a guy like that, too. You need that veteran who has seen it all and can kind of talk to the younger players, too.
All right.
Well, you don't spend a number 12 pick in the first round, 12, 13 pick. You don't spend that on a player that you intend on sitting on the bench. And I say that in terms of Marcus Lattimore. You invest half of the first round pick. You're pretty much saying you have to play or you have to go. All that being said, Sterling Moore can be basically what he was towards the end of the season last year, for lack of a better way of putting it, maybe an insurance policy. We signed him for all practical intents and purposes off the street in, I want to say, week 2.
It was really, and see, what I was always wondering about, he was a starting cornerback in Tampa, and then he was gone. And I liked his game. Unfortunately, they didn't retain him. I think he ended up in Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. And then from Buffalo, they cut him, and I think you guys got him. If I'm remembering this correct, I'm just going off memory here. But he's one of those players that I kind of followed because I'm a DB guy. I love the secondary, and I just I always follow these different players. So I just trying to get an idea of what There you go.
Well, you know,
I just wondered, you know, was it a locker room thing, or I just don't know why, you know, what happened. And, you know, just talking to you, it sounds like he's found a home in New Orleans and he's doing real good.
They like him. I can say that for a fact. The coaching staff likes him a lot. He was a priority to resign. They weren't going to break the bank for him, but because, again, he's really not a starting caliber cornerback anymore at his point in his career. But he is a guy who has seen it all, and he's a guy who can provide some of that veteran leadership, you know, in the locker room that you got. You know, you need a guy like him, and God forbid if an injury happens, he can come in and start for you in a pinch. You don't want him starting for 16 weeks, but he can start a game or two, finish a game off, you know, and you don't really get that big of a drop off.
Yeah, and the good thing about him, he's got starter experience, so he knows what's required of him as far as preparation goes, and he can come in and fill that hole, you know, like you said, for a couple of games.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, you had a question?
No, I was just going to say, I think that a lot of what you guys are talking about, you see it every day. One player reports here and has basically pedestrian statistics and moves from here to over here and then just kind of lights it on fire. Sometimes the changing of your surroundings can bring out the player that you've always meant to be. And I do believe, to a certain extent anyway, that's what we saw with Sterling Shepard. Not only
Sterling Moore. Don't make the same mistake I made. Shepard's in Carolina now,
but also W. Webb. Well,
yeah.
You know, I'm looking at Tampa's draft class, and you've got one of the guys that I really like in this draft.
Were any kickers this year?
Oh, no kicker. No kicker. Tampa didn't learn the mistake of Russell Erxleben, and they traded up to get a kicker. But
I'm sorry.
You've got,
no, that's fine.
You would have thought less of me.
No, you know, honestly, as a, you know, thinking like a general manager, I probably would have done the same thing. It was just a hole that needed to be filled. They thought they did the right thing, you know. It didn't work out. They, you know, they're ready to move on if it doesn't work out. But getting back to the draft,
well, let me put it in terms that are comparable. You guys doing what you did to get your kicker last year, I equate that on some level in trading your entire draft to get Rick Williams. And by that I mean, short of him carrying the ball down the field and carrying you into a Super Bowl winners locker room, there's nothing that you can do on the field that is going to make him worth what you paid for him.
Exactly.
And I think it's the same thing.
Exactly.
You're enough for a young man to something as mental as you know, I've never been a kicker, but as tough mentally as that, I hear that is you magnify that by the fact that you're doing it at the highest level.
You only have one job. You only have one job on the field. That's it.
Yeah. And you know, there was some.
You don't have that job.
Well, there was some talk, you know, that the Saints needed to draft a kicker, and I was always so dead set against it because to me, you never draft a kicker, especially in the first 3 or 4 rounds, because you've got so few picks, and you can't tell me that a kicker is the best player at pick 32, best player at pick 40, best player in the draft, and even pick 45. You know, 75 on down, that's why you see the kickers coming off the board in the 5th rounds and the 6th rounds. And I say that with Morton Anderson being a 4th round pick. But you know, a lot of people like that kicker. And it turns out we, of course, get a kicker from Baltimore who was basically a guy they signed off as an undrafted college free agent, and he actually pulled up better statistics than the Tampa kicker did.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. But again, the transition from college to pros, some people can make it and other people can't. And again, he's back and he's got competition this year. Hopefully that will get him where he needs to be, having that competition. If he doesn't win the competition, he'll be out on the street. Second round pick loss, no big deal. It's not like Tampa. Tampa hasn't done that in the past with second round picks that just bombed. I mean, just based on what Bruce Allen did throughout his tenure and what Mark Dominic did throughout his tenure as general manager for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's just one of those things. And I like this GM because he's not scared to take chances, but he'll be able to cut his losses and move on. And that's what a lot of people and that's what you saw. That's what you see with a Bill Belichick and the Patriots organization. They're not scared to make mistakes, but they will cut their losses. I think they cut somebody and traded them they traded somebody to Cleveland, one of their starters to Cleveland, and that was the year they won the Super Bowl, or last year when they came back and beat the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, I know we're running a little late now, but I just want to talk to you real quick about your draft picks. O.J. Howard, of course, that was probably one of my favorite players in the draft. And you also got a receiver who is going to be, I think, a real headache for the NFC South on third down in Chris Goodwin.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite or a dark horse, somebody you see in this draft class that you think, hey, you guys really need to watch him because he is going to be somebody that's going to, no one expected to do what he's going to do in the NFL?
Yeah. 7th round pick from out of USC, Stevie Tuikolawatu. Defensive tackle. Guy is a space eater. And if you go back and look at some of his game film, he's great against the run, and he's got really nice footwork. Again, he's he's a 7th round pick, work in progress, but I see him as somebody that could make this team and help this team be better. So he's one of my personal favorites, and him and the Chris Godwin pick was just amazing. Just going back and looking at his game film, I know some people look at game film, they look to see what they're doing, they follow the ball. Me, I look for behaviors. And what I see from this guy is, along with having this incredible speed, you have a guy who blocks downfield, who comes in every game and he's prepared. The one thing that really stuck out to me, the first or second week of OTAs, they were asking about Chris Godwin, and Dirk Cutter said he comes prepared. And you never hear that about a rookie, that where a head coach will say, hey, this guy comes in prepared. So I think that, he's going to quietly come in and, he will make some noise in the NFC South, especially.
Yeah, I think he's going to be hell on third down. I really do. I wanted him. Actually, I would have liked to have gotten him for the Saints, but it just didn't fall that way. Anyway, we're almost up against the clock now. Sean, is there something else you wanted to ask, or?
Well, actually, I just wanted to make absolutely certain that, out of respect for our friendship, at the beginning,
here it comes,
the whole 9 yards there. I wanted to make sure to get Gene, the big guy, at Mr. Super Heavyweight. I'll let him disseminate. Gene, tell everybody how they can follow your work in your show, brother.
All right. Yeah, you can reach me on at Super Heavyweight. I think I've got it down here, my lower third here. You follow me, I'll follow you back. I love talking football. Not much of a trash talker, but I do like talking football where it's you bring facts to me and I'll bring facts. I'm not going to sit here and I am a homer, but that's during the game when I'm watching the game. But outside of the game, I can be realistic about stuff. So you know, I'm not easily offended by things, but just don't bring any nonsense. But yeah, and if you guys don't mind, I got to try this. Does my man have the clock? Just 10 seconds of your time.
Hang on a second here. Let me pull it right back up.
Absolutely.
Yep, I got it ready. I got it ready.
All right. So we've got this game. It's called 4th and 5. And basically, 4th down, you only need 5 yards to go to score. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my friend here, Sean, 5 questions. Just all you need to do is all you need is 5 answers for 1 question. All right. So, you know, like, you know, we talk about the NFC South, and, you know, that's our division. And, you know, we talk about like the Atlanta Falcons. None of us like them. And, you know, just tell me when you got the timer ready.
I'm all ready to go.
All right. And as soon as I finish asking the question, you can begin there, Sean. You ready? All right. So, you know, we were talking about the NFC South and the Atlanta Falcons and, you know, how they did against the New England Patriots. Name 5 Saints quarterbacks. Go. Name 5 Saints quarterbacks. Name 5 Saints quarterbacks.
Drew Brees, Kenny Stabler, Aaron Brooks, Manning, Archie Manning.
Oh man, man, I gave you extra time too.
Oh, I got to watch the clock counter now. Come on.
That was bad.
It was fixed.
I got Breeze and Manning.
And my co-host,
oh my God.
My coach threw me up under the bus. I mean,
I'm telling you.
Unbelievable. 4th and 5 and you blew it. Game over.
Yeah.
You threw the ball in the dirt.
Oh man. Anyway, I tried. You know, it is what it is. You can't be the smartest guy in the room all the time.
Yeah. So,
you guys are Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans. As much as I love Dave and the other guy, you can't do any better than following this gentleman right here, Eugene Thomas on Facebook. He knows his Buccaneers football. He's realistic. He's equal opportunity, and I invite you guys to follow him. He's old school like us old farts are, and that means something these days.
Yeah, if you guys see me at the Superdome, please come up and say what's up. I will be at the Bucs Saints game this year, so hey, there's that.
It's always fun games.
All right.
Always fun games.
Don't
well, some good food.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, I have to give Tampa Bay credit. Y'all have, even though it's now been several years since it's been up, y'all still have the most interesting stadium with the pirate ship and the cannons going off when they get into the red zone.
Yeah, section 145.
Yeah, no other stadium does that. So I've always said, you know, God forbid the Saints ever decide to try and build a new stadium. I'd love to get, you know, copy some of the things that they did in the Tampa Stadium. Because that's got to be one of my favorite opposing stadiums.
I love the Dome better than Atlanta Stadium. So
at least
that's
your
a
home
Chinese
stadium is not referred to as Allen.
Wait, what's that? What was that?
At least your home stadium is not referred to as Allen.
Yes, Megatron's butthole. That is the name of the stadium. I just want to know if the
we want to thank everybody. Actually,
no, go ahead.
I had an announcement I was going to make earlier tonight, but we flew right into the intro. I want to invite you guys, as you've always done from day one. About 3 seasons ago, I began a journey with you guys, talking football and doing my best, and you guys following me and supporting me every step of the way. I invite you to continue with the latest step in my career. Effective this past Saturday, I am joining the staff of ProFootballSpot.com as the lead analyst and staff manager for the New Orleans Saints on Pro Football Spot. Guys, to us follow writers, we're going to bring you the very best that we can, and I hope that we give you everything you're looking for in terms of coverage of the New Orleans Saints. And that being said, on Twitter, my esteemed colleague, Mr. at 79 Saints, I am at Drew's Dad 3721. Collectively, we are at Under the Dome PO1. You can reach us by email at underthedome.podcast@gmail.com. We love you guys. Thank you so much for your support. And it means a lot to me to reciprocate to my man, Big Guy, for joining us tonight. Gene, man, it's always a pleasure anytime I get to sit and talk with you. You always open my eyes to something that I didn't know bringing into the conversation. So thank you so much.
I would really like you guys to both come on when I do this, when we get closer to camp. I would like to see how things are progressing for the Saints, because again, people are sleeping on the Saints again this year like they did last year. And this is a dangerous team, and it's a team that's going to win some games that nobody's expecting them to win. So I do expect some big things from the Saints.
My brother. Testify.
I tell you, you just challenged Mr. Harrison as favorite guest on this show from the opposing team. So we definitely have to get you back, during the regular season too, right before the Tampa game. I'd love to have you come back on and
yeah, most definitely.
We'll preview the game, or even do the post-mortem on it, one or the other. But yeah. I gotta say, good luck to the Bucs, except when they play us. But especially when they play the Falcons.
I want people to be scared when they think about the NFC South. So, there's that.
We're the only division, and this is dead serious. We're the only division in the entire NFL that has sent, since the realignment in 2002, has sent all 4 teams to the Super Bowl. No other division can say that. Yeah. So that in itself tells me that our division is the most competitive of the 8 divisions in pro football.
Yeah, most definitely.
So, in the words of Triple H, we're just that.
All righty. Anyway, thank you guys for sticking with us. We went a little over tonight as always. But we got a late start. We started 15 minutes late, so I'm going to take that into account. And join us next week, same bat time, same bat channel, where we have a guest, hopefully from the Carolina Panthers, on, and we can poke fun at them. I mean,
yeah.
And
make sure you give them the business real good.
Oh,
we're going to have one.
We always do.
Have another Saints podcaster. We're just going to be a smorgasbord.
The only I'm worried about is we've managed to alienate every Falcons fan we've ever had on this show. I don't think we're going to be able to get a Falcons fan. Well, yeah, I know. But I'm just saying, I don't know if we're going to be able to get a Falcons fan on here, but we're going to try, because we need to talk to them about, Megatron's butthole, the Chinese takeout box. And I'm going to ask them. I really want to ask them. If the game gets to be close, does stadium roof start to close in a little bit tighter? And then the Falcons are worried they're going to lose a game. There's just, instead of it being this wide open space, just keep closing in tighter and tighter. I just need to know that.
asked you Falcons had us, hey, we need a Falcons, and they're like, oh no, not in public. But
hey,
it is what it is.
I just want to know which NFC South team is going to beat the Falcons 28-3 in this game. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it most definitely would.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us, and as we pick on the Falcons and alienate even more people. And like I said, join us next time on Under the Dome.
All right.
Good night, everybody.